Is there a path out of Myanmar's political crisis and international isolation? And could Aung San Suu Kyi play a role? The 81-year-old Nobel laureate has been in some form of detention since she and her elected government were removed from office in a military coup in 2021. Suu Kyi was given lengthy prison terms on charges dismissed by the international community as politically motivated. The coup that removed her triggered a civil war that's killed an estimated 100,000 people and displaced millions. This week, 2 new photos of her surfaced, Suu Kyi shaking hands with a Red Cross official. For years, her supporters have demanded proof that she's alive and well. Once a global symbol of democracy, Suu Kyi's legacy has changed in recent years. Her choice to defend Myanmar's military against genocide charges over atrocities towards Muslim Rohingyas tarnished her image. Suu Kyi's son has described the visit as the first positive development concerning his mother in more than 5 years when she was last seen publicly. He's demanded her release.
She was incarcerated under trumped-up charges in the first place and should never have been in prison. And I know that the military want to say that the situation in Burma is normalised now, but it's far from that. And until she is free, and along with all the other political prisoners, that just won't be the case.
These photos come as pressure builds on Myanmar's military-backed administrations for independent access to Suu Kyi, particularly from Thailand. Myanmar's rulers have faced sanctions and isolation since seizing power in 2021. They've tried to project normalcy, holding stage-managed, highly restricted elections recently that were widely dismissed as a sham, as well as courting regional neighbours. But critics say a nominally civilian government stacked with former generals has changed little. Much of Myanmar is fractured between different groups. Well, now Thailand's Prime Minister Anutin Charnvirakul says it's time for what he calls calibrated re-engagement. He meets with Myanmar's ex-junta chief on Thursday. Here's Anutin now speaking at the ASEAN headquarters in Jakarta on Tuesday.
A peaceful and stable Myanmar is not only in Thailand's interest as a close neighbour. It is essential to ASEAN's unity and regional stability.
Derek Mitchell served as US Ambassador to Myanmar between 2012 and 2016 and is today a non-resident senior advisor at the Centre for Strategic and International Studies. Ambassador, thank you so much for your time. I'd like to firstly talk about these fresh pictures of Aung San Suu Kyi. Why do you think did Myanmar's government allow the Red Cross to meet with her and for these photos to be released?
Clearly, there's been international pressure on the regime, and the regime wants to be normalized. They want to get out of their international straitjacket. And we don't know precisely who put what type of pressure. And on lying, the former military leader who's now the president, he went to China, he went to India, he's about to go to Thailand, and they've been frozen out of ASEAN meetings, regional meetings in Southeast Asia. So I imagine folks told him that it would be easier for countries to normalize or have better relations if there was some kind of appearance and proof of life of Aung San Suu Kyi, and the Red Cross is the right vehicle for that.
Can you talk us a little bit more about what Myanmar wants exactly right now and what's its strategy to get it?
You mean the government, the quasi-military government? Because Myanmar has many different countries and many different sovereignties, as it were. But that military regime in the capital, in Naypyidaw, that effected a coup, they simply want power. They want to preserve their own power, and preserve their money. They feel they have a privilege and a right, and they have throughout history for decades, that they control the country. And that because they wear the uniform and they tell themselves that they're the only thing between order and chaos, that they have a right to take over when they feel it appropriate. So what do they want now is they want the world to accept their power over the country and their leadership in the capital, even though the people don't accept it and they don't control even half of the country.
You're talking about the world here, and I guess one step to that possibly is legitimacy within ASEAN to Min Aung Hlaing, who was installed as Myanmar's president in April. How important is that to him in the ASEAN context?
Well, in the ASEAN context, of course, it's everything. That's one level. They want, what they want most of all is they want to survive. But once they are surviving, they want legitimacy and protection. And they want over time for countries to get used to the fact that that what has occurred is simply going to sustain, and that you have to get used to it and make a deal with that regime. And in that way, they will protect themselves. ASEAN is central to that. They're the sister countries. It's an embarrassment to Myanmar to be suspended from that organization. It's very rare for a country to be suspended and pushed out, or at least not allowed to represent itself normally in foreign ministry meetings and in summits. But they want not just ASEAN respect, they want US, they want Europe, they want Japan, they want the rest of Asia, as they have, I think, in India and China, been able to get through recent trips by the leader Min Aung Hlaing, gotten some legitimacy by inference, by the fact that they welcomed him and he got sort of a normal welcome that any head of state would have gotten.
You're talking about the push for legitimacy beyond the ASEAN context much more widely. How likely is it that this former junta leader turned president is going to get it?
Well, it's not even certain they're going to get it within ASEAN, because the chair of ASEAN recently, the Philippines and others have said, Singapore, it's going to be a while. They're divided amongst themselves within ASEAN. And many countries simply cannot abide what Myanmar has done to embarrass them. ASEAN has a position on the civil war, and Myanmar doesn't accept that position of dialogue and peace and end to conflict. So basically, Myanmar's thumbed their nose at ASEAN, and ASEAN has not accepted Myanmar back into the fold. And I think for the other countries in the region, it's extremely important for that government to feel that people are moving on. That will send a signal to those who are still fighting them to give up, that it's not worth your energy, that we are inevitable, to lower their morale and get them to simply resign themselves to their fate.
I think you've just hinted there at ASEAN's peace initiative for Myanmar, which is called the 5-point consensus, which includes cessation of violence and the delivery of humanitarian aid. As you say, the president doesn't want to sign up to it. How can he reject this while still wanting to be part of ASEAN?
He is. I mean, it's odd. I agree with you. They're very proud. The military is very proud. They don't want anybody outside the country telling them what to do. So they fall back on the ASEAN way, the ASEAN principle of non-interference in the affairs of other countries. So I think, again, they get their back up, and they've said, for years, they were not part of ASEAN until the late 1990s. And then they were isolated internationally until the 2010s, when they sort of came out and reformed. And what the military, I'm sure, says to themselves and to others outside is, we understand what it is to be isolated. We can handle it. We've done it before. We can do it still. So you don't tell us what to do. These are our internal affairs. We will handle it ourselves. And we feel it is not your place to have a 5-point consensus that doesn't include our voice.
I'd like to talk a little bit about Thailand now. Thailand hosts millions of refugees from Myanmar. Fighting has spilled over the border into its territory. Does that give us perhaps an insight into why it's driving this initiative?
Thailand, yes. Thailand has a lot of interest in Myanmar. Their long border, it's like 2,500 miles or 1,500 miles, maybe kilometers. It's more than 2,400 kilometers. So there's scam centers on the border. There's drugs. There's a lot of illicit activity that happens across that border. Thailand gets much of its energy, electricity generation traditionally from Myanmar. And there's been a traditional good relationship between the military in Myanmar and the military in Thailand, and the government in Thailand is very pro-military. So there's a lot of reasons, as you say, that Thailand would want to have normalization, stability, want an end to the conflict. I happen to disagree that this is the way you get it, frankly, by engaging a regime that is detested by its people people will not accept, and that in fact does not control half the country. The reality is, even though this guy goes around and he sits in Naypyidaw, much of the country, as we said earlier, is fragmented. There is no one Myanmar. There's lots of different sovereignties that have created new facts on the ground and new control by ethnic actors. So I think Thailand, all the countries along the border need to be careful in their engagement of the military regime or quasi-military regime, because they're only making, in some ways, their own situation less supportable by the people in Myanmar.
And just to hone in your point a bit more, it is important, I think you hinted at it there, that Min Aung Hlaing has been sanctioned by several Western nations. He's wanted by the ICC for crimes against humanity. So in your opinion, Thailand, he's due to go to Thailand on Thursday. Thailand shouldn't be welcoming him like this?
No, they shouldn't really. I mean, it's not bad to engage if they're engaging correctly. It's not a matter, you could isolate entirely, which is not necessarily the right thing to do, but it's how you engage. And I think the Chinese have their interest. Min Aung Hlaing just went there, and basically Min Aung Hlaing gave up the sovereignty of the country, sold out the country in every way you can imagine. We don't have time to go into it here, but just that has happened in a country that's very proud and very anti-China because of just historical experience. India, Delhi, the same thing, went there, got the red carpet. Those are not the way to engage, because you're really not going to get anywhere with this regime. But the feeling is, and this is the feeling over decades, they believe, as the military does, that because the country is quite fragmented, there are dozens of different ethnic groups fighting, that they believe the military is the only thing that can hold together the country. And that's actually not true, but it is what these countries believe. And each of them on the border has a border issue. It's a porous border. It's an unstable border. But I think it's about time they reassess that. And I think they're each doing things in their own interest to get what they want, the best they can from this regime, but they're not thinking of the best interests of Myanmar and, frankly, my view, the best interests of long-term stability.
What is life like for people in Myanmar right now? What is it that they want?
They want an end to the fighting. They want to live in peace. They want to develop. They want a voice in their own affairs. And they want to have democracy, such as it was. Not perfect democracy, but they had elections. And in each election, they voted for who their representative was. And they clearly do not want the military in control. They've experienced that now for 60 years, 65 years. And it's led to what used to be, not terribly stable, but a generally growing and developing country, the Rice Bowl of Asia, Burma used to be before it was called Myanmar. And they become a basket case under the military. And at each election, free election, they have voted for Aung San Suu Kyi and her party when they had the chance over the last 35 years. They simply want the military out of politics. They want to have peace. They want to have local ethnicities, want some autonomy and some respect for their cultural differences. And they want to develop. That's simple, like all of us want. And the military keeps invading the democratic process and imposing itself through military means, through killing people. And the people are simply tired of that.
Former US Ambassador to Myanmar, Derek Mitchell, thank you so much for your insights today.
Thank you very much for the opportunity.
So we'd love to hear from you now. Let us know your views on what Ambassador Mitchell has had to say on Myanmar's future. Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel. I'm Jared Reid in Berlin. Thanks for watching.